Good afternoon, live from ZTN Studios in Harare, Zimbabwe. Welcome to Preventing or Managing Corruption, Accountable Urban Governance for an Improved Social Service Delivery in Harare. Hello, I'm Andy Hodges. This broadcast is brought to you by Zimpapers TV network ZTN and our partners, Transparency International Zimbabwe, TIZ. Now, as usual, if you have any comments or views on our show this afternoon, please contact us via our Facebook page, Zimpapers TV network, or via our Twitter handle, @ZTN News. Now, how is the Harare City Council, that's the capital city of Zimbabwe, managing funds received from ratepayers and citizens? Do local authorities practice effective, transparent and good governance to strengthen accountability in the use of public funds? Critics argue that in most urban centres there is poor service delivery. Water is sporadic in many suburbs, refuse continues to pile up on the streets, and the potholed roads and housing situation is well known among Zimbabwe citizens. Joining us on the show this afternoon to discuss preventing or managing corruption, accountable urban governance for an improved social service delivery in Harare are City of Harare spokesperson Michael Chideme, Community Water Alliance Director Hardlife Mudzinga, who will join us in our final segment of the show. Tashinga Zamba, he's a Program Officer at Transparency International Zimbabwe, TIZ. And joining us virtually throughout the program is Dr. Vincent Chakunda. He's a local government expert at Midland State University. Gentlemen, welcome to the program.
Welcome. Thank you. Thank you.
Michael, let's hit this one on the head straight away, shall we? Now, there have been numerous media reports that highlight alleged scandals at the city of Harare. I mean, first of all, it's an interesting number because people want to know how much do you think possibly is lost in these alleged cases? But more importantly, why do we seem to hear these reports, read these reports continuously? They continue happening over and over again. Why do you think that this is?
Yeah, I think our listeners need to understand that the reports that were generated were as a result of internal investigations that the city instituted after receiving some reports of abnormalities. So the city took the lead to cleanse the city of corruption and to redesign the image of the city in line with our vision of a world-class city by 2025. So it's a city-initiated agenda to ensure that going forward, we do not continuously have these negative reports and that we then digitize, go e-lend allocations, e-lend banks, everything is automated. So it's a city-initiated program, and we are happy that the city took the lead. And so then, yes, the media took the story from what the city had initiated. Unfortunately, there is not that acknowledgement from the media reports that whatever is happening now is as a result of the city initiatives.
Michael, it's interesting here because before I move across to Tashinga, I want to look at this issue as a culture issue within the city council, in the sense that the culture of citizens possibly approaching council officials to bribe them or to pay money for certain services, which has been going on for a while. I think even the city councils acknowledge this. Are you trying to change that culture amongst your own workers in the context that don't accept bribes? Do your job and service delivery will improve, and hopefully your wages will improve on the back of that?
Yes, there's a culture revolution that the city is initiating. That's why I made reference to waiting list, e-lend bank, e-allocations. We're going automation, we're automating our systems. So, but before we could go full-blown on the automation, there had to be these investigations to ensure that bad apples or any anomalies, and then so that we do our standard operating procedures. So right now we're doing our standard operating procedures on the land issue to say, if Mr. Hodges wants a piece of land, what are the steps? The steps will be made public to everybody. So if you are applying for land, you will be ticking.
This is the transparency that we're actually talking about today.
So you'll be ticking the boxes to say, I've made my application, I've submitted it, I'm on the waiting list, I'm on what number, so how many more people ahead of me, how many have been allocated, so I could be in the next batch for allocation.
Well, I will talk about transparency later, but let me come across to Tashinga. Transparency International Zimbabwe's, what is its interest in local government service provisions? It's quite an interesting, why are you interested in
Yeah,
this?
thank you, Andy. You know what, our interest is generated mainly from the fact that the services that are provided to the citizens, they are financed from taxpayers' money. So when we hear that there are so many scandals that are happening, you know, land deals, you know, water deals, etc., we see that the money that is coming from the citizen is at stake. So that is our interest. So the interest of TIZ in this particular case is to say we need an accountable local government which provides information to the people as to why and how their monies are being utilized.
I suppose because you do have an interest, of course, and I've done shows before, national issues. So, of course, local issues are just a reflection of that, just at the next tier of government.
True, yeah.
Now, we're now joined by Dr. Vincent Chakunda. He's a local government expert at Midland State University. Vincent, welcome to the program.
Thank you, thank you.
How's the Midlands province? Well, anyway, Vincent, let me jump straight in. Now, Vincent, what do you have to say about the general management of local authorities in Zimbabwe?
Okay, thank you for that very interesting and topical question. I would say actually there is a general collapse of best practice in the management of public resources in local authorities owing to a number of factors that have repeatedly been raised by various stakeholders, which among other factors include corruption. I think our media, the public space, is actually littered by serious evidence of gross abuse of resources, of corruption, of scandals involving politicians, local authority management, and councillors. So generally, you see it's a trend that is cutting across all local authorities in this country, that there is a serious decline in public resources. And the resources that are being collected from the local people as the basis for the delivery of services are not actually being utilized appropriately and in accordance with the expectations of the residents. So services are generally declining. So that's one of the issues that you actually note from our scenario. Then again, there is also failure, which is actually a trend across all local authorities, to produce up-to-date accounts for auditing, which to me is the basis of the corruption that we are seeing. Those of you who have seen the Auditor General's report for the year ended 2019, for the year ended 2018, which was actually produced in 2019, you will note that of the 92 local authorities in Zimbabwe, only 3 managed to submit up-to-date final accounts for auditing by the Auditor General. So to me, that is the basis of all the corruption, where local authorities are actually failing to produce evidence of how they transacted the public resources during any particular given period.
Vincent, I'm going to get back to you on that AG because it is a question I want to ask later. But let's get back into the studio here. Michael, you heard Vincent, and I think let me put the phrase that struck me the most. It's the collapse of best practice in management of public resources across all councils. That was the statement I think that really captured me when you were speaking. So let me ask you, Michael, in your opinion, are there any policy gaps at local government level, including within your own council, the Harare City Council, that allow for this resource leakages to misappropriation or misuse, or as Vincent put it, collapse of best practices?
Yes, what we are trying to do, or what we are doing to address the concerns raised by Vincent, is we are doing standard operating procedures for every activity that happens in council. So the standard operating procedures then will bring the transparency, will weed out the corrupt elements.
This is about putting in best practices for each role.
Yes. So suppose you want a business license, there's a standard operating procedure. If you want to have a commercial stand, there's a standard operating procedure. If you want to hire a council stadium or a council hall, there is a standard operating procedure.
But Michael, you will concede, however, that documentation and action in Zimbabwe are two very different things. And we have lots of great documents, but actually the actual implementation on the ground. So what monitoring level are you going to be putting in place that these SOPs are effective and work?
Yeah, yes, council has set up a monitoring and evaluations unit that also follows up on each department, on each division or a unit in council to see whether what has been agreed upon is being followed.
Okay, so
Yeah.
you're
And
monitoring your own workers.
Yes, and we also have an internal audit division or unit, right, that falls under the town clerk's office, that also follows on activities to say, were these things done properly? And the moment we go for automation, I think most of the bad practices are automatically
I
eliminated.
mean, you have how many staff members? I mean, it's quite a number, isn't it? So
Yeah,
it's
quite a
it's
number.
quite a challenge to manage
but
all
some
of
of the
that and stop leakages.
but some of the workers that you're referring to, the big numbers, they're either cleaners, you know.
Oh,
yeah,
they're out there, they're not really at the head office or the central
they don't
townhouse.
hold or they any cash transactions, for example,
Okay.
or they don't make those decisions. They are employees. They are actually part of the service delivery.
Okay, all right. Tashinga, you know, again, TIZ, watchdog organization. So, referring to what Michael is talking about, SOPs and so forth, what has your organization been doing to ensure the principles of good governance, accountability, and transparency are being held and maintained by local authorities?
Yeah, sure. So what TIZ has been doing is that we have been engaged in capacity building workshops where we build capacity of councillors and some of the guys from the secretariat on issues of procurement, you know, beneficial ownership, transparency, in terms of publicizing information about who won the tender or who did not won the tender. So we are still actually, you know, in a fight to say, guys, can you please adopt these best practices so that transparency and accountability is taken.
And this
as a
is
first
happening.
priority
You're doing it across the
Yeah,
country.
Across the country. Yeah, sure.
I mean, that's exactly. So therefore, as much as SOPs come in, it also, as we talked about, it's culture, mindset, a change in that corruption or taking money to your leakage is wrong. I think this is something that people don't understand. It's actually inside every one of us to change that sort of mindset.
Yeah, sure. So it has been on two different levels, at council level and at grassroots level. So to say people need to be, you know, to have social accountability tools in their head so that they are able to ask for accountability on whatever which has been done by the council.
Okay, we'll now have to take a short breather. If you have any comments or views on our show this afternoon, please contact us via our Facebook page, Zim Papers TV Network, or via our Twitter handle @ZTN News. You're watching Preventing or Managing Corruption, Accountable Urban Governance for an Improved Social Service Delivery in Harare. This broadcast is brought to you by Zim Papers TV Network, ZTN, and our partners, Transparency International Zimbabwe, TIZ. Now, in our next segment, we ask, how can corruption be controlled and managed at the Harare City Council? Are urban councils doing enough to fight corruption? Don't go away, we will be right back. Welcome back. You're watching Preventing or Managing Corruption, Accountable Urban Governance for an Improved Social Service Delivery in Harare. This broadcast is brought to you by Zim Papers TV Network, ZTN, and our partners, Transparency International Zimbabwe, TIZ. Now, should you have any comments or views on our show this afternoon, please contact us via our Facebook page, Zim Papers TV Network, or via our Twitter handle @ZTN News. Now, of course, on the line, he will be with us throughout the show. There's Dr. Vincent Chakunda, who's a local government expert from Midland State University. Vincent, let me start with you, because this is a critical question. In your opinion, are urban councils doing enough to fight corruption, which, of course, should lead to better service delivery for residents?
Okay, thank you for that question. But perhaps before attempting to respond to it, one perhaps wonders if councils are actually fighting corruption or perpetuating the vice. Why? Because the majority of the corruption that is happening in local authorities is actually involving councillors and management and other employees of council. So one then wonders if councils themselves are indeed fighting corruption or are actually perpetuating the vice. I'll say, from the point of the Constitution, from the point of our laws, there are mechanisms in place to fight corruption at the local level, which include internal and external auditing, enforcement of local government legislation, and investigations by the Zimbabwe Anti-Corruption Commission. But as far as I'm concerned, I'll argue and say our local authorities are not doing their best to fight corruption for the following reasons. One, the mere fact that they are failing to produce accounts for auditing, it gives every reason for us to think that all the corruption is actually hidden in the accounts, which unfortunately are not produced on time and submitted for external auditing. So where you find a local authority failing to produce financial statements, accounts for auditing, that will give the residents enough reason to think that the internal systems for fighting corruption are weak. Like I was about to indicate, that of the 92 local authorities, only 3 for the year ended 2018 managed to submit the accounts, up-to-date accounts for auditing. And the Harare City Council was actually not one of those 3. So that's one. Then the second reason, local authorities are not doing their best to fight corruption, partly because of the weak internal audit system. If you are to look at the majority of the audit reports, you will find that it takes an external auditor, it takes the Auditor General to uncover corruption that is happening in the local authority, which means, but without the internal audit system raising the red flag that such things are happening. What then it means is that the internal auditing system, which ordinarily should be consistently checking and monitoring the systems of council to ensure corruption, to ensure compliance, and ensure that the systems are not corrupt, are not doing their jobs. So you find there is corruption involving the road fund, there is corruption involving probably land sales. Then for years it's not uncovered, but it only comes to be known when the internal auditor publishes his report.
Right, Vincent, thank you. Let me come back to the studio here. Tashinga, I think this is the critical point here. Yeah. I just want to highlight a couple of issues that Vincent said there. He says, are councils fighting corruption or actually perpetuating it? Because it appears that this is happening in councillors, in top-level management, rather than the bottom end. So it's almost like a top going down. And this is what he is saying. He's saying, of course, the failure to produce audits for auditing and weak internal audit systems. Michael, you will comment on this. And only 3 of 92 councils countrywide actually submitted 2018 audited reports. Your comments on this very quickly.
Yeah, I would like to agree with Vincent there to say, I don't think that corruption is being fought wholeheartedly in councils. Why? Because the Auditor General's report, if you check it, from behind maybe 2015 up to date, same things are recurring, same things are coming up. Why is it councils are not reforming? Why is it councils are not implementing wholeheartedly the recommendations from the Auditor General to say, so that the public will believe and they see action at the hand in the fighting against corruption? This is why STI is that you are coming down to the people to say, you guys, you need to have power to ask your leaders, to ask your councillors, to ask your council to accountability.
Stand up and be counted,
yes,
so to speak. Yes.
When you see an infield beside your house, go and ask, is it possible that you can build a house there? You know, that's accountability. Go and ask and get answers. Then by doing so, we unearth and begin to see corrupt activism being rebuked here.
You're right, citizen involvement is critical. Michael, there's a lot there to unpack, but I think I want to really look at issues such as, are you doing enough to fight corruption, in your opinion, in City Council? You heard Vincent there talk about top-down and the kind of alleged corruption practices that are happening in councils, but also as well, to what Tashinga also said, recommendations set out in the Auditor General's report, they seem to be reoccurring. How far are you going in implementing some of these recommendations?
Yes, I believe our council is doing enough to fight corruption. Like I alluded in the first segment, the current investigations that have led to whatever is happening right now were initiated internally. So it's the investigating unit is our municipal police, and it was initiated by the offices of the offices of the town clerk and the offices of the mayor, to ensure that, and which is part of the recommendations of the Auditor General's recommendations, to say, let's do these things so that we bring transparency to operations. Yes, at the moment there's a lot of agitation, and we will understand it, but we pray for patience so that at the end of the exercise, people can actually come and say, oh, you guys, the job that was done is good, and you managed to cleanse the house, or you managed to set the record straight. And as you know, there are a number of people who are before the courts right now, so it will be very difficult to comment extensively on those issues, because we don't want to jeopardize the court proceedings. But whatever will come out of those court proceedings will be able, or will be good enough judgment on the actions initiated by the city to say you did well or you did badly.
Now, it's interesting. Tashinga talked about TIZ doing, if I can call it, learning or teaching at lower levels, at actual citizens level. So what avenues are they for me? I live in Harare, Tashinga lives in Harare, you live in Harare. What can I do? Who can I report to? How can I make sure that if I do report corruption, or I do try and make, come to council to highlight certain issues, they actually will be followed, I'll be listened to, and they'll be followed up on? What is the internal process?
I think it's a matter of confidence, right? Yeah. Different people have confidence in different institutions. There are people with confidence in council, then they should come to council. We have our municipal police, we have our investigation unit within the municipal police, we have our internal audit based at Rowan Martin, we have the town clerk's office, who is the chief executive of the city, who is accountable for everything that happens.
And citizens can go to any of those offices if they want to. Is this what you're saying?
Because it's about confidence.
Okay.
Who are you confident to report to? Some go to ZAC, some go to ZRP. It's about confidence. So we are trying to build that confidence in the institution called Harare City Council, so that when tomorrow you have an issue, or you have a case of corruption or of anything, you are free to walk in and report and never face any reprisals from whoever you have reported.
Exactly. I think that's the key for citizens. And I mean, we will talk about the service delivery, because you talked about how citizens can see that council is doing a good job. I think if I'm a Harare citizen, as I am, service delivery, isn't it? Not Tashinga. But let's talk about your organization, Transparency International Zimbabwe. Look, we're having this dialogue here on ZTN, of course, and a very vibrant dialogue it is, and thank you for that. But what else are you doing with urban councils to improve their knowledge, particularly on issues of procurement, transparency, beneficial ownership, and of course, good governance? And on top of that, have you identified any gaps and opportunities, and do you have any recommendations that you can give council so that they achieve good urban governance?
Yeah, we have been doing a lot. TIZ has been partnering with PRAZ, the Procurement Regulatory Authority of Zimbabwe, to train councillors, to train the local councils on procurement and beneficial ownership. The response has been fine, and it has been okay. But we are yet to reap results, because the results that we will measure the results because of the number of corruption cases that are reported that are implicating council. So whenever we see a reduction in terms of adherence to procurement procedures and everything, we begin to say we have reaped a result.
So your barometer is corruption cases go down.
Yes. So other than that, we also have been training citizens to use report cards, to use social audits, to use social accountability as a tool to manage or to identify corruption. Also to ask leadership, or to ask those who are in power in offices to account. We are still doing a lot again in terms of fostering social audits, to say, if you see a councillor getting into office with a bicycle, then after 2 years or after 6 months, it's got a D4D. You need to ask for accountability. Where did he get the money? Yeah. You see.
But this is why I think the issue comes back of possibly councillors, mayors, and even members of parliament. I think we've discussed it on one of the TIZ shows, actually declaring their assets. That suddenly becomes a good thing to do, even at council level.
Yeah, so in terms of the gaps, corruption is the big gap. Corruption is a big gap. In terms of the recommendation, we just recommend that at national level, we need to have a Whistleblowers Protection Act. People have got corruption issues that they see, but they're not forthcoming in terms of reporting. So if they are protected at law, they are easy to report even to council, like Mr. Jame is saying, to police or to ZAC. So that is the bedrock. That is the best and the bedrock in terms of our recommendations. Let there be a Whistleblowers Protection Act.
That's on the cards, though, if I'm not mistaken. All right, Vincent, we have a couple of minutes before we have to go for a breather, but very quickly, if you don't mind, Michael Chidema here talked about confidence, in other words, citizens approaching council, also Transparency International. Tashinga talked about the training given to councillors and so forth to make them aware of transparency, beneficial ownership and procurement, for example. Your comments, sir.
Okay, my comment perhaps starting with Mr. Chidema on confidence. It's very difficult to have confidence with a system where almost every important people in that organization is implicated in corruption. If you look at Harare City Council, the mayor is implicated, the town clerk is implicated, management directors are implicated, and the employees. How then can we have confidence in such a system? Then again, to Zach, you see, Zach has been so lethargic in prosecuting corrupt officials. And again, it's difficult for people to have confidence in a Zach that it does not only seem captured by politics, but also that is so weak in pursuing serious cases of corruption. So, people confidence, yes, people ordinarily should have confidence, but the system is too corrupt, and a lot of important people are actually involved in the corruption. That's what I can say in relation to what Mr. Chidema just said.
Thank you for that, Vincent. It's time for us to take a breather, and we'll, of course, Vincent will be back with us after the breather. You're watching Preventing or Managing Corruption, Accountable Urban Governance for an Improved Social Service Delivery in Harare. This broadcast is brought to you by Zim Papers TV Network ZTN and our partners, Transparency International Zimbabwe TIZ. Now, in our final segment, we say goodbye to our panelist, Tashinga Zamba. He's a program officer at Transparency International Zimbabwe TIZ. And we say hello and welcome to Community Water Alliance Director, Mr. Hardlife Mudzingwa. Now, in our final segment as well, we ask, what are the challenges affecting water service delivery in Harare? And how can it be ensured that ratepayers' money goes to service delivery? Don't go away. We will be right back.
Life will never be the same again.
Absolutely. No. How do you tell someone in Baria or in Soweto that they should exercise social distancing?
Every single one of us, barring a few, are praying more.
What is the health economic cost of what we are trying to achieve?
I don't know whether his chairman knows he runs at about 9 in the morning.
Yeah, I've just got the symptoms, so I just called the doctor and and then he just advised me to have to stay at home, eh?
Life will never be the same again.
Absolutely. No. How do you tell someone in Baria or in Soweto that they should exercise social distancing.
Every single one of us, barring a few, are praying more.
What is the health economic cost of what we are trying to achieve?
I don't know whether his chairman knows he runs at about 9 in the morning.
Yeah, I've just got symptoms, so I just called the doctor and I just and then he just advised me to have to stay at home, eh?
Welcome back. You're watching Preventing or Managing Corruption, accountable urban governance for an improved social service delivery in Harare, which of course is Zimbabwe's capital city. This broadcast is brought to you by Zimpaper's TV network ZTN and our partners Transparency International Zimbabwe, TIZ. We now welcome Community Water Alliance Director Hardlife Mudzingwa to our program. Hardlife, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Andy. Afternoon, viewers.
Now then, you know, Hardlife, obviously Community Water Alliance. So let me ask you a water question. Now, water and water delivery have been a challenge in Harare now for many years, and also, in fact, in most cities and areas in Zimbabwe. Why is this? And do you see this water challenge ever coming to an end?
Yeah, I think there are quite a wide range of root causes to the crisis of water service delivery within Zimbabwean local authorities. The first, of course, is varying and changing climatic patterns, which has affected the amount of water available, raw water available for abstraction, treatment, and distribution to our residents. The statistics that were released by ZINWA are quite telling. When you look at Gweru, when you look at Bulawayo, when you look at Masvingo, when you also look at Harare recently in terms of the dam levels. So that's the first root cause to the crisis of water service delivery. The second one is on, paltry budget allocations, both at local authority level and at national level. If you look at our last budget, less than 1% was committed to water and sanitation. But if you look at the requirements, for example, here in Harare, the city, remember we've had discussions for years on the construction of Kunzwe, Muda and Msabi Dam. Kunzwe alone requires 678 million US to construct Kunzwe. So if you look at rates payment within the local authority, they cannot sustain or manage such a huge capital project. It requires budgetary commitment from national government when we are doing budget, from particularly the Ministry of Finance. So that's another root cause. Then the other issue is relating to management of catchments within Zimbabwe and preservation of wetlands. Remember, it's a serious issue which has also had challenges relating to allocation of houses on wetlands, poor management of catchments. That's another cause. Then the other one is also looking at revenue leakages, and sometimes the reports coming from the Auditor General's reports. If you look at how funds also are administered, there are questions.
I'm going to ask you about that. But so I must be honest, I don't want to get depressed, but it looks like what you're saying is that these issues, water issues, aren't going to come to an end very soon.
Yes. Yes. Oh,
wow, okay, well, unfortunately. Anyway, let me ask you about these revenue leakages, but in specific about one particular loan. Look, from your perspective, can you just briefly explain to us the Chinese water infrastructure loans that were given to Harare, city of Harare, particularly I think to Morton Jaffrey Waterworks and so on? And do you believe the entire loan process was transparent? And of course, that means by implication accountable. And were the loans utilized for their intended purposes? Michael will respond, but what do you say, Hardlife?
Thanks very much. I think there's a lot of misconception on this loan. The first issue that I want to highlight to our viewers is that this loan was secured by government at national level through the Ministry of Finance. So it was a government-to-government agreement for the 144 million US. And secondly, in terms of how the loan was administered, there were a lot of questions on the administration part. You can go to the audit report from 10 June to 10 July 2014. Which unearthed that even if you look at the warehouses that were constructed at Morton Jaffrey, the prices were inflated. So it was not used, as intended. That's why, in terms of disbursement, the local authority only got a half. We only got half from that loan. Not all of it was disbursed. I don't know the current developments in terms of the interaction that are there, but the last time that I checked, we did not get all the 144 million. It was half, and the reasons are quite telling in terms of, like I've said, some of these issues relating to revenue leakage.
Michael, very quickly, you heard Hardlife's comment there in terms of the loan, the Chinese facility loan, government to government, and maybe you could quickly comment on that. But more importantly as well, on top of that question, mechanisms in place. I think one thing that residents are confused about is they pay their money, but they don't seem to see their money going towards better service delivery. And they have this perception that there's leakages in the system, and as you talked about already, corrupt practices. So let me ask you to comment on what Hardlife said about the Chinese facility, and also this perception that the council is not spending residents' money on improving service delivery.
All right. The money was came as to fund capital projects, because that could not be funded from ratepayers' money, because ratepayers are not able to pay or are not paying in full what they owe the city. At the moment, the city is owed over $1 billion, which money could have been used for other service delivery activities. But going back to what Hardlife has been saying, only 72 million was disbursed, and it was not disbursed as cash. It came in as pieces of equipment. So there was no money deposited in the city of Harare accounts. So for anyone to say the city of Harare abused this amount or that amount, but it was a government-to-government agreement, not that amount of money could never have come without the government participation. So only 72 million came, and we're still waiting for the balance. And that money has done a lot of improvements at Morton Jeffrey. It would be nice sometimes to go there and see the old pieces of equipment that were removed that are there within the complex, and the new pieces of equipment that were installed. And the net effect of that work has been, unfortunately, the increase in water pipe bursts, because there was an improvement in terms of output.
I think that's one of the comments as well, in fact, that it's not so much the output, it's the fact that you have old water piping going throughout pretty much all of the city. That's a major issue as well, is it not?
Right. Yes, that's a major issue, and there's also been a question to say, why not start with the pipes and not with the plant? So it's an egg and chicks situation. What begins first? So we had to start from somewhere within the plant, and then anticipate that we get more money to do the pipe work. So right now, what you see in Harare, I hope Mr. Mudzingwa can also confirm this. There are areas that have not received water in a very long time, but are now beginning to receive water, and people are beginning to report pipe bursts in areas that they say, oh, I'm just seeing a leakage at my property or within our street. Areas like Mount Pleasant, areas like the Borodales, areas like Mavugu Tafara, where water had not been there for a very long time.
So council's position is water delivery is improving.
Okay, let's clarify that one.
Okay.
Right. There is that it's a temporary improvement, because if you listen to what he said, the climate issues, right? The declining dam levels. So this could be a temporary improvement, right, in terms of the infrastructure in place.
I see.
But we need, yes, but we need more water sources.
Okay. All right, Vincent, let me come across to you, because you can obviously comment on that quickly, but one of the issues that I did mention here in the studio, of course, was residents want to see service delivery improving. So what recommendations can you proffer to local authorities to improve service delivery, especially in urban centers?
Okay, there are a number of recommendations that I can make. One, let's look at capacity building to improve the oversight role of council. I think our councillors are relatively weak to monitor management. The other one, let's also look at the mechanisms to monitor the implementation of Auditor General's recommendations. I think there are a number of very interesting and important recommendations that have been made by the Auditor General but it appears we are lacking in terms of systems of monitoring the extent to which our local authorities are implementing those recommendations. Let's also look at restructuring the frameworks of accountability, particularly for internal auditors, so that at least we change the current situation where internal auditors are not only employees of council, but are also accountable to chief executive officers. So, it's difficult when the internal auditor is trying to do his job, then the CEO may want you to tell him that, look, you are my subordinate, so you must listen to my tune. Then let's also look at forensic auditing of land sales. I think land is it's not an infinite resource anyway. It's a resource that comes to that we can exhaust.
Right.
What is no more in the business of
Vincent, I have to stop you there because we are coming to the end of our show. But thank you very much. Those actually were very good recommendations, even if I say so myself, because I do live in Harare, so I know this. But let me ask you, Hardlife, very quickly. You only have about a minute to answer, unfortunately. Your recommendations to improve transparency and accountability, and ultimately public service delivery in local authorities.
I think I concur with the previous speaker that we need to train our councillors, and not only training, but also looking at even their qualifications somehow, because they are presiding over a very huge budget. We are looking at $300 million US budget on a yearly basis. So we need some sort of minimum qualifications for them to grasp some of these issues. Remember, we are talking about public finance system. So that issue, I think it's important and paramount if you want to improve issues related to accountability. And then second one, creating some systems of checks and balances, strong internal systems of checks and balances.
So that's the audit
if power
issue that
resides in
Vincent
one
was
person,
talking about.
if power resides in one person or one department, that is very dangerous for the local authority. So that's an area that I think we need to
Thank you. Now, finally, Michael, and I can only give you a minute on this, literally. Information about tenders. I think that's something that's a topical issue. It seems that no information is going out, and people want to know what tenders the City Council doing. So what are you doing to ensure transparency and that citizens actually can actively find out what exactly is happening within their council?
Right. Our tenders, we publicize them on our website, on our social media platforms. We advertise them in the press. Right. So what we also do is the people who win the tenders, they are also approved, the names go to full council and they become public information. Okay. So anyone can access the council minutes to see who is supplying.
You can find the council minutes. I've tried once. It's quite difficult.
They are available. Okay. If you go to the third floor and talk to the reporters there, they have a whole chunk.
Okay. So the citizens can find out if they do the work, and of course I hope you put it onto a website eventually so that you can look at it online.
Yes,
as well.
And you can also attend the full council meetings to hear for yourselves. And right now we are doing our live, our full council are live on Facebook. Okay. So you can listen in, watch at home.
So the information is there.
The information.
Right, unfortunately, we have to leave it there. We have come to the end of our program this afternoon. You have been watching Preventing or Managing Corruption, Accountable Urban Governance for an Improved Social Service Delivery in Harare. We'd like to thank our panelists, City of Harare spokesperson, Mr. Michael Chideme, Community Water Alliance Director, Mr. Hardlife Mudzingwa, Tashinga Zamba, Program Officer at Transparency International Zimbabwe, and Dr. Vincent Chakunda, Local Government Expert based at Midland State University. Thank you very much, all of you, for participating today. This broadcast was brought to you by Zim Papers TV Network ZTN and our partners Transparency International Zimbabwe TIZ. Well, that's it from me this afternoon. I'm Andy Hodges. Goodbye, and you all be safe.